In a historic speech to Congress, Pope Francis tackled some tough political and social issues, calling for compassion towards immigrants and refugees and protection of the planet against climate change. In addition, the pontiff said the sanctity of life meant opposing the death penalty and questioned whether the family was being weakened by our broad definitions. Here with more on the papal address is our man in Washington, Chris Castile. Sir, how are you doing today?
Hey, Dave, just fine. How are you?
Doing well. How's that traffic in D.C.?
Every time they have an event where, they make it sound like, it's going to be apocalyptic, it never is. And I'm always grateful for it because I know that everybody will stay home after all the warnings. And that was the case this week. I mean, Metro ran more smoothly than it has, in months. And I think the roads were basically just empty. It was like a ghost town here for the last couple of days, unless you were riding around where the Pope was.
I read that about Philadelphia, that a lot of these people who put their homes up on the market thinking that they were going to make a windfall over this week, they were still vacant, so perhaps it's the media warning people of...
It is. It just gets blown out of proportion. It's scary. I think the federal government here in D.C. allowed people to telework, and I'm sure a lot of private businesses did too, just said, hey, stay at home if you can, and, like I said, that's good.
Well, there was a historic occasion today, even if it was good for you. You still had to work as the Pope addressed Congress. And how did the Pope approach those social and political issues I mentioned at the top?
I think he approached them very carefully and very diplomatically, Dave. He stepped into a very divided Congress. There's a very divided country over issues like climate change, like, abortion and immigration. The Pope has very, clear and strong views on those, but he worded them today, in such a way as to not, make them kind of easily seized upon, I think, by either party. And he was just very careful, very respectful, I think, of the occasion and of the people, not to incite anything. And it's not like he was going to avoid these things. They mean a lot to him and to Catholics, like abortion and immigration, take care of the poor. But again, there was just nothing in it for him to go in there and try to be, like he was in a Republican or Democratic debate or trying to create a soundbite or something. In fact, it would have been very difficult, I think, on a lot of these issues that he spoke about to take away a soundbite from it. Probably more than anything, if you assess the speech overall, it really was about just trying to take everything that's great about America, work together and try to do the best that you can for all people, whether they're refugees, immigrants, the poor, whatever it is. I mean, I think what he tried to do was call people, together to cooperate.
Talking with Chris Castile via Skype. We have our Skype working again. He's in Washington. You saw his Twitter handle, NewsOKPolitics, and you were live tweeting the Pope's speech, and I think you were curious as whether there would be bipartisan applause during the Pope's speech, and as it turns out, yes, there was.
There wasn't a lot. I asked Congressman Tom Cole of more, what he sensed about, kind of whether, like at the State of the Union, you get the Republicans standing up on some issues and Democrats, and it just, it gets fairly,
You clap. No, you clap. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, Cole said there wasn't really much of that at all, and again, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, not to, reiterate all of that, but I think the Pope was doing his best not to incite moments like that. Probably what I felt like the biggest applause that he got was when he just talked about the Golden Rule. That was the most sustained applause. I couldn't quite figure it out, but, maybe it's something everybody could agree on.
That's right. That's one thing everybody could agree on is the Golden Rule, but you're right. They did receive the sustained applause there. You also mentioned on Twitter now that Pope Francis has concluded his comments. Congress can get back to some partisan fighting and moving towards government shutdown.
Which they did almost immediately. They had the vote just a few minutes ago in the Senate on this resolution that would keep the government funded through, at least I think through mid-December, without giving any money, quote, to Planned Parenthood. it's arguable whether that the resolution would actually have that effect. But anyway, it needed 60 votes in the Senate. It only got 47. And that, to me, is a really, really strong message from the Senate to the House. This shutdown strategy is not going to work. We don't have anywhere near the votes for this. Let's move on. So the Senate's going to move, really quickly now toward a resolution that'll keep the government open for a few months without, any kind of Planned Parenthood language in it. And I was talking to Tom Cole about it not long, just a few minutes ago, and he said that he does not think there will be a government shutdown next week when the money runs out. They'll do something to keep it open.
You mentioned Tom Cole. Of course, he was there. So was Senator Langford with Archbishop Paul Coakley from Oklahoma City, this diocese here. What was some of the reaction from the Oklahoma delegates?
None of them are Catholic that I talked to, but very polite. Very, very respectful of being there. Of just the moment. I was asking Tom Cole if anything, stood out for him, and he said, really just being there, because of the history of it. He thought the Pope made both sides of an issue feel awkward, which he thought, any good clergy would do. But he really was just, kind of mindful of the moment.
Very good. The Pope addresses Congress. The Pope's visit will include New York and Philadelphia over the next week. And Chris, as I let you go, I assume we'll see a lot more fiats being driven by our politicians in Washington now?
I don't know. I don't know if you will or not. Not up here where it seems like every Uber car is some huge SUV. But I may have tweeted out too that I don't expect to see too many lawmakers driving around the U.S. Capitol campus in a little Fiat like that. That's just not what Americans drive, right?
Of course not.
That was.
Chris Castile from Washington. As always, we appreciate your time and your analysis, sir.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
And more political coverage can be seen in the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com.